realistic about the NHL. I go to the tryout to do my best and to take experience. And
the Tampa Bay Lightning didn't sign Manon Rhéaume because she had earned it. They signed her because a brand new franchise in Florida needed cameras pointed at something, and a 20-year-old woman standing in goal was the loudest headline they could possibly buy. She faced 9 shots in one period and stopped 7 of them. The stunt actually played hockey back. The sport she stopped those pucks in had never made room for anyone like her. Professional hockey in the early 90s had no women's division, no scouting pipeline for girls, and no written rule barring them either, because a written rule was never necessary. Every level of the men's game simply assumed its rosters would be male, which meant a woman could only get onto the ice if someone with power chose to make an exception. Access was never a right in this world. It was a favor, granted or withheld by the men who ran the sports, and almost nobody was granting it. Manon Rhéaume grew up on the wrong side of that assumption in Lac-Beauport, Quebec, where her father flooded a rink behind the house and her brothers needed a body to shoot at. She put on goalie pads at 5 years old and refused to give them back. In 1984, at 11, she became the first girl ever to play in the Quebec International Pee Wee Tournaments, an event that had been running since 1960 and had featured thousands of boys before her. The pattern of her childhood was set early. She was good enough to play with the boys, and she was constantly told the boys' game was not for her. Teams passed on her because of her gender, not her glove hands. She kept showing up anyway. The proof that she belonged came in 2 moments, months apart, that should have settled the question forever. In November 1991, the Trois-Rivières Draveurs of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, one of the top 10 junior circuits in the world, put her in a game against the Granby Bisons. No woman had ever played major junior hockey before that night. She entered with the game tied, faced live fire from future professionals, and stayed in until a slap shot cracked her mask and opened a cut that needed stitches. She wanted to keep playing. The wound, not the competition, took her out. The following spring, she traveled to Tampa Bay, Finland as the goaltender for Canada's national women's team at the 1992 World Championship. She allowed 2 goals across 3 games, posted a .957 save percentage, was named to the tournament all-star team, and left with a gold medal around her neck. By any honest measurement, this was an elite goaltender in her prime, carrying a resume of genuine firsts and championship results. That resume is what makes the next part of the story so uncomfortable. When the phone call came from the NHL that summer, it didn't come because of the stitches in Trois-Rivières or the gold in Tampa Bay. Years later, the man who made that call would admit, in print and on the record, that her ability had almost nothing to do with it. Understanding that admission requires understanding the mess Phil Esposito was sitting in during the summer of 1992. His Tampa Bay Lightning were an expansion franchise preparing for their first NHL season in Florida, a state with no hockey tradition, no hockey weather, and no obvious reason to buy hockey tickets. The team was set to play in Expo Hall, a modest building on the Florida State Fairgrounds that held barely more than 10,000 seats and had housed livestock during the state fair. Esposito, a Hall of Fame scorer turned general manager, was not building a contender. He was trying to convince a warm weather market that his sport existed. His solution was attention, pursued by any means available. When critics inside his own organization questioned his choices, his defense was blunt. An expansion team was not going to win anything, so it needed publicity. And once curious people came through the doors, the game itself would hook them. He pointed to his own draft table as evidence. At the 1992 entry draft, the Lightning used a 3rd-round pick, 49th overall, on a center named Brent Gretzky. Scouts didn't consider Brent a 3rd-round talent. The last name on the back of the jersey was the asset, because Wayne Gretzky's little brother sold headlines, even if he never sold highlight reels. Esposito later confirmed the logic himself, saying plainly that we had to get people in the building. Inviting a 20-year-old woman to an NHL training camp was the same play scaled up. A Gretzky sibling was a curiosity, The first woman to ever skate in an NHL camp was a global story, guaranteed to put cameras in a fairgrounds arena that no national outlet would otherwise visit. The invitation went out to Rhéaume, and the calculation behind it was never really hidden. Here is the part that complicates the cynicism. She understood the calculation and accepted it anyway. Rhéaume was not naive about why an expansion team in Florida wanted a female goalie in camp. She had spent her whole life being told no by people who never watched her play, and now the highest league in the world was saying yes, whatever its reasons. Her position was simple. The motive belonged to them. The opportunity belonged to her. If they wanted to use her story to sell tickets, she would use their stage to prove she could stop NHL shooters. She has said later in interviews that people ignored a crucial detail at the time, which is that she still had to perform in training camp to earn a start. A team will stage a spectacle, but no coach puts a goaltender in a real game, even an exhibition, if she embarrasses herself in practice. The cameras were already booked. The question was what they would actually capture once the puck dropped. September 23, 1992 was a manufactured media event before it was a hockey game. Reporters who had never set foot in Tampa filled Expo Hall to cover a preseason matchup between an expansion team and the St. Louis Blues, a game that, in any other circumstance, would have drawn a few local beat writers. The Lightning got exactly the coverage they had engineered. Newspapers from across North America carried the story, and a franchise nobody had heard of 6 months earlier was suddenly a name in every sports section on the continent. The product being sold that night was not hockey. It was the word first.
Manon Rhéaume was in the net last night when the Tampa Bay Lightning took on St. Louis in an NHL preseason game. Manon Rhéaume is a woman.
Then the game started, and the product had to stand in a crease and survive. Rhéaume got the start against a legitimate NHL lineup, facing shooters like Brendan Shanahan, one of the most dangerous power forwards of his generation. Over 20 minutes of play, she faced 9 shots and stopped 7. The 2 that beat her came from Jeff Brown and Shanahan, and neither goal was a soft one that a veteran would have swallowed easily. When the horn sounded to end the first period, the score was tied 2-2. A woman standing roughly 5 feet 6 and 130 pounds had held her ground under more media pressure than most goalies face in a playoff series, and left the ice even with the National Hockey League. The building responded to her, not the marketing. Fans chanted her name, wanting more than the single period she had been given. The plan never included more. She was lifted after the first intermission, the Blues eventually won the game, and the soundbite was complete. Her line, 2 goals on 9 shots, reads as ordinary until you remember the context. First NHL camp, first NHL game action, 1 period to justify a lifetime of being told no, and she finished it tied. 1 more chapter followed at that level. The Lightning brought her back the next fall, and she played a period of a 1993 exhibition game against the Boston Bruins. After that, the NHL portion of her career was over. 2 periods, 2 preseason games, and the door closed as quietly as it had opened. That detail is worth sitting with. She had just demonstrated on camera in front of the entire hockey world that she could compete in an NHL crease without being overwhelmed. In a sport that claims to reward performance, that demonstration led to nothing at the NHL level, because the people who arranged it had never planned for it to lead anywhere. Rhéaume never played a regular season NHL game. No woman has. The Lightning collected their headlines, banked the attention, and made no move to build anything underneath the movement they had created. There was no development plan tailored to her, no institutional push to find the next female prospect, no pathway carved for anyone trying to follow her through the opening she had made. The breakthrough was monetized in full. The barrier stayed exactly where it was. Esposito eventually confirmed what the structure of events already suggested. In his 2003 autobiography, Thunder and Lightning, he acknowledged that bringing Rhéaume in had been a publicity move for a fledgling franchise fighting for survival and attention. Give him credit for honesty, if nothing else. The general manager who opened the door admitted he never intended to hold it open, and the franchise that profited from the image of progress had never budgeted $1 for the substance of it. Progress was sold to the public that night in September. It was not funded. The treatment continued down the organizational ladder. Assigned to the Atlanta Knights, Tampa Bay's top minor league affiliate, Rhéaume kept functioning as what the parent club had built her into, a gate. Her appearances pulled coverage in crowds that had nothing to do with her glove hands. When she started against the Cincinnati Cyclones in April 1993, the Omni packed in a sellout of 15,127. Even a rung below the NHL, she was booked first as an attraction and second as a goaltender. She answered by building a real career out of the scraps. On December 13, 1992, she came off the bench for the Knights against the Salt Lake Golden Eagles and became the first woman ever to appear in a regular season professional hockey game. Over the next 5 years, she suited up for 7 minor league teams across North America, from Atlanta to Knoxville to Las Vegas, appearing in 24 professional games in leagues where nobody was staging anything and every shot was sincere. Internationally, where merit was the only currency, she added a second World Championship gold in 1994 and backstopped Canada to a silver medal at the 1998 Olympics in Nagano, the first games ever to include women's hockey.
I'll prepare myself for the Olympics. I think it's a great opportunity for women now to have the chance to be at the Olympics, and I want to be there for the first time.
None of that was in the Lightning script. All of it was hers. Her story leaves a question that outlives 1992 and applies to every marketed milestone since. Institutions have learned that first woman moments generate enormous goodwill and coverage, and they collect that value eagerly. The test is what they build afterward. When the cameras leave, is there a road behind the door? Or did the organization simply sell photographs of a door it kept locked? For Rhéaume, the honest answer came from the man who signed her in his own book, in his own words. Here is the strange ending Esposito never planned. His cynical ticket-selling scheme outlived its own cynicism. The stunt produced an image, a 20-year-old woman calmly guarding an NHL net, and that image escaped the marketing department entirely. Thousands of girls taped it to bedroom walls and treated it as permission. A publicity play became women's hockey's proof of concept, and the league's accident became a generation's evidence. If you want these stories before anyone else sees them, Healthy Scratch members get every video early for $2.99 a month. Another story from hockey's strangest corners is already on the way. Subscribe so you don't miss it.